Why did the emu cross the road? Because Australia declared war on it. Now, before you start thinking we've gone off the deep end, let us assure you, this isn't a tall tale or a quirky punchline. This is as real as it gets. Welcome to the saga of the Emu War, a true blue chapter from the annals of Australian history. Yes, you heard it right, a war with emus. So buckle up and prepare to dive into the most feather-ruffling war in history. Imagine this, the year is 1932 and Australia is under attack. But not from an invading army or a deadly disease. No, sir, the enemy is emus. Now you might be thinking, emus, those big, goofy, flightless birds? Yep, those are the ones. But don't let their innocent looks fool you. These birds were on a rampage. Here's the scoop. After the Great War, Australia was trying to help out its veterans by giving them farmland to work on. But then, these emus showed up like uninvited guests at a barbecue, and boy, did they make themselves at home. You see, these birds were used to migrating after their breeding season, looking for greener pastures, literally, and they found it, all right. They found it in the wheat fields of Western Australia, causing all sorts of ruckus for our poor farmers. Now imagine thousands of these birds, each standing as tall as a man on a horse, descending on your crops like a feathery tornado. You'd be a little miffed too, right? So the farmers did what anyone would do in such a situation. They complained to the government. And the government, well, they had a solution, all right, and it was straight out of an action movie. They decided to arm men with machine guns to tackle the problem. Yes, you heard it right. Machine guns against emus. It was as if they were preparing for a feathery version of Saving Private Ryan. Picture this. Soldiers in their uniforms, armed to the teeth, not marching off to war against another nation, but against a bunch of birds who had the audacity to be hungry in the wrong place. It was less of a war and more of a wildlife chase, with the emus playing a high-speed game of catch me if you can. But you know what they say about best-laid plans. They often go awry, and boy did they go awry. But that's a story for another scene. And so, armed with the machine guns and a can-do attitude, the Great Emu War began. Now, you'd think a bunch of birds wouldn't stand a chance against machine guns, right? Well, think again. See, this was no ordinary bird hunt. This was the Emu War. And let me tell you, those emus, they're not your average feathered friends. Despite being up against machine guns, they proved quite the formidable force. With their surprising speed, they could outrun the soldiers, bobbing and weaving through the vast Australian outback, leaving the humans huffing and puffing in their dust. And you'd think that, with their size, the emus would be easy targets. But they were resilient, tough as nails. They could take a bullet and keep on running. It was like trying to hit a moving target while riding a roller coaster. Now add to that the logistical nightmare of trying to wage a war in the harsh Australian outback. The heat was brutal, the terrain was unforgiving, and the emus, well, they knew the land like the back of their wings. They could disappear into the bush in a heartbeat, leaving the humans scratching their heads and swearing up a storm. It was a wild goose chase, or should I say emu chase, that left the humans frustrated and exhausted. Despite their superior firepower, they were outsmarted and outrun by a bunch of flightless birds. After a month of chasing, shooting, and a whole lot of cursing, the humans finally admitted defeat. So, who won the Emu War? Well, let's just say there weren't any emus signing peace treaties. In the aftermath of this feathery fiasco, the public reaction was a mix of amusement and disbelief. The Australian government was left blushing brighter than a kangaroo's backside in the summer sun. The emus, those feathered victors, strutted around like they'd just won the Bird Olympics. They didn't even need to fire a single shot, unless you count the droppings they left behind as a reminder of their triumph. On the human side, it was a different story. With their tails between their legs, the Aussie government had to swallow their pride and admit defeat. They'd been outsmarted by a bunch of birds who couldn't even fly. The only thing that flew was their credibility, right out the window. In the end, the emus proved that sometimes brains beat brawn and feathers beat firepower. And that, folks, is the story of the Emu War, the most ridiculous war in history where the birds beat the bullets.